Jen Gerson, as I live and breathe
Hello.
once more.
Yes.
Are you playing with your hair, or you do like I don't know what you're doing with
No,
your
I'm
hair
just
right
holding it up and also trying to hide my paint-riddled hands. I'm in the midst of sort of procrastinating from necessary writing by doing sort of DIY home improvement projects,
now.
which is what I do.
My house is never cleaner than when I'm on deadline.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I start wandering around going, man, I really should write this, but this looks dirty. I should clean that.
I need dust.
So I got a list ahead of us here in front of me here of topics that we could talk about. Here's the thing. The big three stories of last week are still the big three stories of this week. We're further along in the ceremonial protocols and observances of the Queen having passed away. The Ukrainian armed forces seem to still be fighting in the southeast of the country, but they seem to have taken an operational pause in the north, which we knew was going to happen. They were outrunning their supply lines. They needed to take a break. Pierre Poilievre we held off publishing our dispatch, the written version, last week because we wanted to see the official results. He's had a first week in office, and there's already been some fireworks and some drama on that front, clash with the media, apologizing for going after a defector who's sitting as independent. But I don't think we're going to see a lot of federal politics until after the Queen's funeral. I mean, partially because the prime minister's out of the country, but also partially it's kind of a weird vibe right now.
Yeah, it definitely is. So yeah, and also, he's spending the first week kind of finding his feet and getting it's a bit of a get to know you phase. So I don't know. Do you want to get that? I don't really have like a list of things like I usually do that I want to talk about.
I mean, is there anything to say about the Queen we haven't really said already?
Well, we do have a dispatch coming up about how the monarchy is a cage. So our readers should expect that. That's a really fun one. There was an interesting piece by Kenan White I read today from his newsletter Shush, where he went into a book that got into a lot of King Charles's little foibles, and they really do raise some question about whether or not this person has the correct temperament for this job. He is quite precious, to put it mildly. But you know what, we'll see. But anyway, that is kind of worth reading. It might be worth linking to. I don't know, what else is there to say about the Queen? What else is there to say about the Queen?
I mean, when it comes to the King, I would add singing the other day. It's funny. I don't know if I know I've told you this. I don't know if I've mentioned this on the dispatch. My wife and I keep adding movies to a list. Like I add one, she adds one, and we watch them together. And we try to find ones the other hasn't seen.
That's really adorable.
One of the things we're going to watch is Stand By Me. And it's way back down the list. But the Stephen King short story, I think it was, adapted. And Will Wheaton is in it. Little bitty. It was around the time we were born. It's like a Stephen King novel adapted into a movie. Will Wheaton was Wesley Crusher on Star Trek: The Next Generation. Will Wheaton kind of became a really interesting example of the adult who kind of comes out of a weird head zone after having been a child star, but then reinvents himself and kind of goes, that was a really fucked up environment to be growing up in.
Yeah.
Charles is a child star. Like I think we understand. Don't put your kids into high-level athletics, high-level performing arts, because it's going to ruin them as adults if they're successful.
Yeah.
Charles was born into a role.
And some of his preciousness is completely inevitable, as a completely inevitable response of the type of life he grew up into. Like, I'd have someone iron my shoelaces too. I mean, you'd be a nightmare. I'd be a nightmare if I had that level of coddling from day one.
Yep. So let us acknowledge that we have ruined poor Charles. That doesn't mean he will not prove to be an effective king. Like, we talk about this, you and I sometimes. Your kids are younger than mine, but one of the things you're going to start running into when they get a little bit older is your kids will say stuff and it will reveal to you how clueless they are because you've over privileged them.
Yes.
And imagine that, but like 100,000 times worse.
Yes.
You're going to have some personality quirks too. So
this is not wrong. I mean, are we going to take the stance, like, give Charles a chance crying into the screen? Like, it's too soon to write off Charles just because we've already ruined him as a person.
I don't know if it's maybe just acknowledge that we've ruined him. I mean, I think probably we talk a lot about how the Queen was the monarch that bridged like two eras, right?
But Queen Elizabeth II might actually have been an extraordinary anomaly.
She
in
might
the same way, in the same way that our period, the period of history that she reigned over, was an extraordinary historical anomaly.
What I was just thinking is that it might, like, maybe Queen Elizabeth II wasn't the monarch that really marks the generational shift. Maybe it was Charles. Like, we talk about how much the world has changed during her reign, but I think almost by inertia, she could sort of keep doing things her way because she's the queen and people generally liked her. Charles is going to have like a really hard adjustment. Like when your predecessor is in the job for 70 years.
Well, isn't it kind of funny too that like the respective monarchs really symbolize the most extreme version of their generation's traits. Like Queen Elizabeth was the greatest generation, so she was the most extreme version of the greatest generation. Perfectly stoic, perfectly self-serving, self-effacing, like everything you want in a human. And Charles III is the most extreme version of a boomer.
Meanwhile, Harry and Meghan are extreme millennials with their podcasts and Instagramming.
Right. She's Markle. So there you go. Right. Like she's the most extreme version of this. We'll see how Kate and Will's turn out. But I mean, like they seem to like take on, and I don't say this as someone who totally just wants to trash the boomers and or Charles. Charles also has some really interesting traits. Like if you read some of his writing, he's a fairly spiritually aware human being. He's got some interesting opinions and ideas about the world. He clearly takes the environment very seriously. I don't think he's all bad. But like the coddled sense of entitlement that was begat by a historically anomalous period of extreme wealth, and like you got to admit, like he takes all the most extreme boomer traits and turns them into 11, doesn't he?
Yeah, you know what? If I knew more about William, the new Prince of Wales, I could probably offer a comment on that one. But no, it's a fun thesis. The Queen, the embodiment of sacrifice, duty, honor, and tradition.
Just refusing to die to let her boomer son take over.
Then the boomer son who is a little bit precious and clueless.
Yeah.
And then with Harry, at least, and his wife, a very online,
extremely millennial. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, we'll have to see what happens to the others. Okay, that's fun.
But I mean, if you want to also divide like the best and the worst of the millennials, you kind of have the best of the worst in Will's and Kate's and Harry's Meghan. Like on one hand, you have this one side of the millennial culture that's just terrible in every way. But William and Kate may represent the best of our generation too, the side of our generation that steps up in the moment. But we'll see how they go. I don't know.
I'm forgetting the term. So you're aware of the concept that millennials should be grouped into two generations, right? Like, and the idea is that the millennial generation was bisected by the online revolution, and that made a mark. So when I was a kid, turning into a teenager, we had tape decks, vinyl records were still
you and I are the not totally irredeemable older millennials.
When I wanted to talk
Harry
to a friend,
is also an older millennial, but it could very well be that you see that divide marked between William and Harry.
When I wanted to, I mean, basically the dividing line apparently is when you were in grade 8 and you wanted to talk to your best friend, I picked up a landline phone. People who are still millennials but are 10 years behind me sent an instant message. And
that's right.
So I don't know. It's interesting. That's fun. Yeah, we could have some fun with that. On the Ukraine front, I don't think I have anything to add. I mean, we can chat about it here for a minute. But look, the Ukrainians had an unbelievable military success in the Northeast and paused. And myself and some of my military nerd buddies were saying to ourselves, when are the Ukrainians going to run their supply lines? Like, it happens eventually. And also soldiers just get exhausted. So we knew there was going to be a pause. There seems to have been a pause. And on Friday afternoon, there's been some preliminary reports that they're rolling again in the Northeast. Everybody's had a sleep. They've had a shower. They've had their uniforms laundered. They've been eating. equipment's fixed and they're gassed up, ready to go. So we'll see if that goes anywhere. We can update people in a written blurb, but like in terms of developments, I don't think I really have any. Like the only, well, maybe is it worth mentioning at all in a written dispatch? And maybe it isn't, that like Putin showed up for some meetings and people are making him wait.
That's kind of fun.
Like,
but maybe that's something we should hold off on. Let's put a pin on that, and when we do our next Ukraine update, maybe bring that up.
It's just intriguing. It's just like Putin, people are like, yeah, okay, like Putin's up there sitting on the stage in the chair where like the leader of Kyrgyzstan shows up like 5 minutes late. How the mighty have fallen. We'll keep an eye on Russia though, because that's a powder keg. I don't like the trend lines there. Anything to say about Poilievre that we kind of didn't cover last week? I think if the Queen hadn't died, we might have seen a different week in our federal politics.
Yeah, this would have been a more interesting week on that front. I've got a column coming up on Poilievre, taking on two of the talking points that were most frequently leveled against him. One on the cryptocurrency stuff, and the other one on firing the Bank of Canada, Governor of the Bank of Canada. I don't want to call it a defense of Poilievre, because I don't think it is that. I think that it's, if you look at sort of the context behind some of these comments, you'd realize that it's not the hit that you maybe think that it is. With all of that caveated by, there's lots of stuff that Poilievre has done and continues to do that I think is unabashedly bad. One of which is, of course, he fundraised off of David Aiken throwing questions at him during a press conference. That was an interesting case because I think it was an obvious case where Aiken was made a breach of decorum. Normally at a press conference, you allow the politician to say their prepared remarks, and then you can kind of shoot questions at him. However, Poilievre, I don't think, has taken questions from the media since June. And Aiken was clearly frustrated, and so he interrupted those early remarks by basically being like, "I want to ask you questions about this and this and this." It was a failure on Aiken's part. He did apologize. That said, Poilievre didn't miss a beat, and he used the outburst as an opportunity to fundraise off of the media. Do you see what we're up against? We're up against this, liberal. This guy was a liberal heckler, and we're up against this, And this goes back to something that I think we've already written about at the line, which is that Poilievre is running against the media purposely. Like, that this is a strategy that he is engaging in. It's one that I think is very pernicious, very harmful, and I think it's very dangerous to do that. But that is a strategy that he has chosen. And the media, I think, to some extent, has to be a little bit smarter about the fact that that's happening. What am I going to mean? The media. There is no the media. Like, you know what I'm saying here.
There's enough of a media that you can make some general comments about it.
Yeah.
And I would say a general comment about the media is that we are tone deaf. We don't read rooms.
Yeah, we don't read rooms. That's right. We are so sure that we are the good guy in every situation. We're so sort of inspired by our own messianic kind of complex. We're here to democracy dies in darkness. We're here to save democracy. That we don't quite. It doesn't quite connect for us that 75% of the population hates us. So I think that that's a bit of a problem. But I think that it's worthwhile to sort of do a bit of a thing on a dispatch on just a defense of Aiken. He did the gentlemanly thing by apologizing. That was correct, and I don't think it was correct for Poilievre to fundraise at the moment. But I recognize that that's the moment we're in.
I think what I would add is that when it comes to the media, I think you're right about messianic complex. There's some of that there, but I also think, like I've said before, imagine you're at a dinner party and it's 9 dentists and you're going to be bored out of your mind because there's going to be a lot of talk about teeth. Or you're at a dinner party with 9 accountants and the accounting and tax code stuff is going to bore you to death. We are probably no more navel gazy than any other profession, but the average dentist does not have 20,000 Twitter followers. And when a bunch of dentists on Twitter are talking about teeth, no one's watching. And meanwhile, here we are, we're like online, we're like, here's Jim and here's Susan and all my friends, and we're talking shop, right? Just as we would at a bar. There are hundreds of thousands of people watching us do this, and you know what? Like, sausage making is not good. I think journalists would instinctively know that no one likes knowing and watching how the sausage gets made, but don't instinctively jump to, and that's why we're going to have all of our conversations and fights on an open forum in front of hundreds of thousands or millions of spectators.
Yeah. That was smart of us. It's great.
And I think like you've said it, Poilievre is campaigning against us. And I don't think there's been like some crazy conspiracy theories this week. Aiken's a plant. It was done deliberately. It was coordinated. My response to that is a succinct fuck you. The other conspiracy is that somehow Poilievre baited Aiken. I don't think so. I think he pissed Aiken off, and David lost his temper. By the way, just for purely disclosure, I know David. I like David. I've known him a long time.
David. He's lovely. He's a gentleman.
I've worked with him at 2 different media companies now, but I think he fucked up. Like, yeah. I think he lost his temper.
He fucked up. Like, we're not going to defend sorry. We're not going to defend Aiken when he's acknowledged he's fucked up. I mean, like, he's acknowledged he's fucked up, but I mean, so what? We all fuck up on occasion.
The Poilievre campaign was ready.
Yeah.
See, I've watched the video a few times now, and what's amazing to me is how, without missing a beat, Poilievre had a plan B. Like, you know, one of my friends had, who's out of politics now, but a former politician, had said to me, Poilievre's going to have to be careful, because it's hard for guys who've been campaigning for months to stop campaigning. And there's going to have to be a time when Poilievre's going to have to stop campaigning. I don't know if I agree with that, because we seem to exist in a semi-permanent campaign. But I think Poilievre right now, he's tuned up. He's tuned in, right? Like, he's been on the campaign trail for months.
He's also amped up.
Oh, yeah, no, well, he always is. David snaps at him, and Poilievre, who is just off the campaign trail, and all of his combative instincts are toned right now, just go, oh, okay, switch to attack plan, bravo, boom, evil media up against you, you're a shill, you're a hack, fundraiser out the door. 3 hours later, probably raised tens of thousands of bucks on this. We repeat, you and I, what we've been saying for weeks. This is a plan. This is not like some guy who, like Poilievre, it's not like he's a jerk and a curmudgeon. I don't know, maybe he is, but what we're seeing here is not a personality quirk, it's a strategy. I don't know when people are going to realize this. I don't know. Maybe Aiken, maybe he's the object lesson. Like, maybe he will serve as a reminder to the rest of us not to do that. I was interviewed today by a radio station here in Ontario, and I was tweeting about this a few days ago, and the host asked me, what should journalists do? I said, their jobs.
Yep.
But carefully.
Yep.
Because your missteps will be weaponized.
Yep.
Your temper will be weaponized.
Yep.
Your errant comments will be weaponized.
Mm-hmm.
We have to understand that we are explicitly targets, and we have to act like it. So careful what you say.
Which requires us to act more like politicians, ironically.
We're combatants in the culture war, and I don't want to be. Like, I'm
only interested in being combatant in a culture war in defense of my own ability to do my job. That's where beyond that, I don't give a shit. Just leave me alone. Let me do my job.
Forgive me for being old and curmudgeon-y, but I liked it more 10 years ago when we didn't have to worry about this bullshit.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And also when people also respected, no, I'm just an old curmudgeon-y bitch to everyone. It's just kind of my thing, man. I don't know what to tell you.
It's all part of your charm.
Part of my charm, indeed.
Look, here's the thing. 10 years ago, I'd write a column that would piss people off. You'd write a column that would piss people off, and we'd get an angry email. There would be 30 people who would talk about it online.
Yeah.
Today, Aiken loses his temper at a news conference. Hundreds of thousands of people are talking about it online, and the Conservative Party of Canada has a pre-ready plan in place to roll out email blasts to identified subscribers, which will not only raise them money, but it will also promote engagement. It'll build a narrative, and it will identify supporters.
Yep.
You don't have to like it. And I think there is a bad habit out there among some people to interpret analysis as endorsement.
Yep.
This is bad. This is corrosive. This is dangerous.
Yep.
It's going to work though. And you can't cure what you won't diagnose. What is required now is not that we all get on the same hymnal page for statements of outrage.
It isn't that if you are mistaking analysis, like Poilievre is doing X or Poilievre is doing Y, and you're mistaking that for some kind of endorsement or normalization or apologia of Poilievre, I think you've lost the plot. You're now so deep in the rabbit hole that I'm not sure that you can see your way out, and you're certainly not in a good position to be able to strategically act in your team's best interest.
Well, it's worse than that. I mean, I agree, but I would say on top of that, a lot of what people want to see is not about strategy. It's not about adaptation. It's about signaling moral opprobrium and being on the right team.
Yeah.
And for people out there who are outraged at Poilievre targeting the media, that the Conservative Party of Canada seems to be leaning in that direction of a weaponized campaign against the media. Believe me, folks, I share that outrage more than you might think. But if I don't respond to it carefully, I'm going to help them, not me.
That's right.
And I don't think I have an answer of how to appropriately respond to this. We live in an era where bad actors with large social accounts can get away with a ton of shit, and we have not solved this problem yet. I'm hoping some smart guy comes along, or girl comes along with a solution, because I don't have one. In the meantime, I'm kind of adopting a do no harm position. I'm going to keep doing my job. I'm going to write about things that interest me. I'm going to talk about things that interest me. I don't have a side. I'm going to piss everybody off, but I will do my level best not to rise to provocations, because that helps them, not me.
That's right. And you and I have the same philosophy of journalism on that one, but I don't want to get too much into sausage making because, of course, it is boring for the audience. What
I suspect the
else?
audience is
do we want to
interested
talk
this week.
Yes, fair. But do we also want to talk about Poilievre sort of going after the MP?
I confess to you, I'm aware of what you mean. So one Conservative MP from Quebec, Alain Rains, I think it was, crossed the floor. Well, it didn't cross the floor. Will Citizen Independent.
Yeah.
And there was an immediate apparent text message campaign kind of whipping up anger against him. Call his office today, tell him you stand.
And this is a pretty clear example of, shoot the wounded for discourage those autres. And I'm going to mangle the French. I apologize, but this is a clear sort of Poilievre can't afford to actually allow some kind of splittist campaign to form within his ranks. So he's going to make sure that things are very ugly for anybody who challenges his authority or credibility.
Well, I mean, look at it this way. I don't remember I'd have to go back and check, but I mean, my gut feeling is that Poilievre probably inherently had 80% of the caucus. What about that other 20%?
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at the size of the Conservative caucus, we're talking about 20 people-ish. One of them bailed.
And then on top of that, you have the sort of the disgruntled red Tory ilk. You have the center ice conservatives, and what's going to happen to them? Are they going to be able to? So he can't afford to let any, from a purely strategic point of view, he can't afford to let any of these people go without a pun, without feeling it.
Here's the thing. Human history would be less miserable if 90% of people did not go along with bad stuff to get along.
Sure.
Most of the non-Poilievre MPs will find a way to reconcile themselves, and they'll tell themselves whatever they need to solve their own conscience.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, we can look at that. Probably what you're saying is, to the extent that we'd say anything about this, that there's going to be a period of consolidation, and the Poilievre team doesn't play nice.
Yeah, and also just does me. That's not me, endorsing an attack campaign on this MP. That's me pointing out that
You know what it is.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, just in case any of our listeners are of the type to assume that analysis is endorsement, no, that's not me endorsing this or saying this is good or bad. This is me just pointing out what he's doing, why.
Well, look, Jen, what do I always tell people? Our expectations are a problem. We are going through a significant change, and I will use very neutral language here. We're going through a significant change in our politics right now. I don't know if it's a permanent change, could be a phase, could be a fad, but for right now, our politics is about to get nasty. we have to acknowledge that, and we can condemn it all we want, but we're stuck with it.
Hmm.
You know, I was told earlier this week that we in the media, there's a danger if we're not careful with our reporting and our commentary that we're going to normalize this stuff. Stuff is normalized. It's normal. You know why it's normal? Because it's here.
Yeah,
And
pretending that this is like the Poilievre is now the leader of the official opposition. Pretending this is not normal is fantasy. That's delusion.
Yep. And we've heard a lot about normalization during the era of Mr. Trump in the United States, particularly, right? Oh, we cannot normalize this behavior. If we're talking about it because it's powerful enough to exert real political influence, it's normal. It may be immoral, but it's normal. And I think, again, I still think our expectations are a problem. And I still think there are people who think, probably for good reasons, moral reasons, that if we just point to something and go, that's bad, that it will like shirk away from the, yeah.
And also that's bad, so what? Honestly,
history is full of bad guys winning.
So what if it's bad? What of it?
If it works, this is the thing, history is not one long unbroken series of good guys saying to the bad guys, you're bad, and the bad guys say that.
So what is the wrong way and it's bad and
therefore, that's like, I would say, and therefore, we'll figure this out. Like we'll hone this into something more coherent.
We'll hone this into. I feel like we're kind of like hammering out a column here between the two of us.
That's what the dispatches are for, really. Yeah, oh, by the way, while we've been talking, I did get an email. We will have something on the media angle. That's confirmed by one of our friends is going to write something. Awesome. So do you want to talk about Green Party for a minute? I want to move off federal politics, but do you want to talk Green Party just for a second?
I mean, I just think their collapse has been very entertaining. I was lucky enough to witness Enemy Paul at an event recently, and I was just very impressed by her. Like, I just think she was. I understand why she made mistakes as a leader and doing what she did, but like as a human being, she's a very impressive person. And I continue, and I mean, we said this at the time, but like the fact that the Green Party couldn't help her, develop into a leader of a major political party, and instead made it impossible for her to lead that political party, just tells me how unserious and unworthy of actual attention this party act is. But I mean, I believe their party president just resigned amid this like completely inscrutable, like misgendering, mispronouncing kind of stuff that was just so inside baseball, so obscure. And to me, just to further emphasize, this is not a serious party anymore. This is just a club. This is just a club of people.
Counterpoint. Green Party was never serious. We give the Green Party too much attention. There are serious people in the Green Party. There are serious policy proposals the Green Party has made. The Green Party as an entity is not serious, and we give it too much attention.
Okay, so let's not give it any more attention.
Well, I mean, I'm always happy to mock it. Elizabeth May does not get enough credit for how she kind of, by sheer force of personal will, guilted the Ottawa establishment into pretending her party should be taken seriously. But being taken seriously means scrutiny, and the scrutiny has revealed that it shouldn't be taken seriously. So maybe one day, but not yet.
Do you want to talk about Toronto? Because I want to talk about Toronto. You've got a great Toronto blurb.
Well, I've got two. Do you mean the handgun one or the relative decline one? All right. So a couple of days ago in Toronto, a cop was murdered, and it was cold-blooded. From what we understand, this cop, who's actually in one of the neighboring villages, well, not village, one of the neighboring jurisdictions as suburbs. The Mississaugas are going to be pissed off. I call them a village. Sorry, guys. One of the adjacent jurisdictions had a joint training exercise, and a series of cops from local forces were at the training exercise. One of them stepped out to get a bite to eat at a nearby Tim's and was shot cold-blooded, point-blank range. He was assassinated by, and the believed motive was someone who wanted to kill a cop. That individual, it is believed, then shot and killed a nearby business owner, and shot and grievously injured the assistant of that business owner, a part-time student, just fucking awful. That individual, the part-timer, not expected to survive, but remains alive at this time. Police later caught up with this individual and he was killed in exchange of gunfire. I'm being very vague and neutral in all my statements here. In Ontario, we have something called the Special Investigations Unit. It is an arm's length agency that investigates any incident involving loss of life or serious injury involving police.
Mhm.
So with a dead officer, a dead civilian, and a dead suspect, none of the cop agencies are talking. Like the SIU is running this investigation, but bits of information are trickling out. A couple of days ago, one of the who was it? I'm sorry. I wish I should have written this down. A senior cop at one of the involved jurisdictions was giving a press conference talking about what was known, and cops talk in their own language, cop talk, and they don't have a lot of emotion, right? Like cops will get up in front of a lectern and be like, the orphanage members were dismembered with a pitchfork. They're this is deliberate.
Yeah.
All of the orphans were then hurled into a lake of fire, and then the nun was beheaded. Like they don't get emotional,
Yeah.
but one of the cops got emotional, and obviously he was emotional because this hits home for cops.
Yeah, of course.
One of their own is murdered. But he was talking about what we know about the crime, and what we know about the crime is that the weapon used was a handgun, and the question was asked, was it a legal handgun? You have to know cops, and I do know cops, to know that this cop was pissed off that he had to talk about this. And I will see if I can pull the exact quote somewhere, but he's like, no, of course it wasn't. Legal handguns aren't used in these kinds of crimes. The suspect, who's now dead, had a long criminal history, including violent crimes and firearms charges. Indigent, no fixed address, living out of a car. Not like, if you own a handgun in this country,
you can't own a
can't
handgun
live in
in
your
those
car.
circumstances.
Yeah, like a criminal
you
record.
you cannot safely store a handgun if you're living in a car. I don't know what to tell you.
If you are not a gun owner in this country, and if you do not know any gun owners, you might not know this, but there are very strict laws about how certain kinds of firearm are stored.
Yes.
You can't do it living out of your car.
No.
You probably can't get a gun license if you have a criminal record, unless it's a long time ago, and maybe you can show letters saying, look, I got busted for pot when I was a teenager, and now I'm in like 61-year-old architectural engineer. And if you have a violent criminal history,
no,
you're not getting a gun license.
No.
And the officer was just pissed off. Again, he didn't lose his cool, but I know cops, I know the way they talk. And he said, we know in Ontario that roughly 90% of the guns that we can trace come in from the United States. We have to fix that. It's not a legal gun problem. And I wrote a column a few days ago about decline, right?
Yep.
And I laid out a series, I called it like my questionnaire on decline. Is there a problem, and is it getting worse? That's question one. If it's getting worse, are we doing anything about it? That's question two. Question three, if we're not doing anything about it, is there something we could be doing? Like I kind of like went on and on the list. Gun violence in Toronto is one of those things where we are not doing what we need to do to fix the problem. For political reasons, our government is insisting on doing stuff, but it's targeting the wrong group of people. Why? Political rewards. The Liberal government had a choice between easy political rewards or difficult, long, but actually effective policies, and they went with the easy political rewards. I'm not going to lay a dead cop at their feet, because that would just be a dick thing to do. But when you have a serious problem in a country that people are dying, and the government basically goes, well, we could do something about this, but actually there's real political advantage in us doing something totally bullshit that won't address this problem, but it'll help us win a couple more seats in the 905. So let's do that. I don't know what to call that. It's bad policy. And I would say we're entering the realm of the immoral.
I think that there's your dispatch right there.
I get pissed off when I talk about this stuff.
You do. But I mean, it's also within the realm of like, it's bad, and
yeah,
which is sometimes fine.
I think every journalist has one
You've got one
Shibboleth.
thing that, look, for me, it's supply management. For me, it's butter. I want better butter. I don't know. Like, that's just it.
But I think all of us as well also have one issue where they basically can say, if you are not serious about this issue, you're not serious. And I know journalists where it's like agricultural policy or mental health care in a community or access to childcare spaces, right? Because most of us in this era, because there's so few of us left, we're generalists. We have to be.
Yeah.
But we have one or two issues we're actually passionate about. And those issues can be radicalizing. Because I'll meet like a totally normal downtown Toronto reporter, totally normal dude, works for the Star or something. And you actually find out that lack of like affordable daycare spaces in his neighborhood have turned him into a political radical. And he'd vote for anybody who would pledge to fix that problem. And all right.
Well, this goes back to my other note, just as an aside. I think people underestimate how effective the promise of $10 day daycare was in getting the Liberals elected. I think that is a massively underplayed. I think that actually managed to save their asses. But that's another conversation for another day.
You would know better. You'd know better than me because my kids are.
Oh, in Calgary, it's not a problem. In Calgary, it's not a problem. In
Toronto, it's a problem. My wife's
in Toronto, it's a problem. In Vancouver, it's a problem.
My wife makes good money, as teachers in Ontario do. We kept her home for 3 extra years because sacrificing the $100,000 salary made more sense than putting 2 kids in childcare.
Yep.
So I get it. Do we want to talk about the RCMP? I know you got to run. You have a call.
I kind of do have to run. I have to. Yeah, I got to get my eyebrows done because I'm getting family photos taken tomorrow.
We have very different lives.
Yeah, we do. You've never had your eyebrows waxed now?
No, I confess I haven't. Although I remember once being at the barber and just chatting about like baseball or something, and the barber took the comb and like stuck them into my eyebrow, and then took the trimmer and went like, and I remember like it had never happened before, and I remember thinking to myself, I have no eyebrow. The guy just went nuts. He went rogue. He took my eyebrow off, and then I look in the mirror and I'm like, oh no, it's still there. Oh, actually, that actually looks good. So I hadn't realized I was old enough to start getting bushy old man eyebrows.
Yeah, bushy old man brows. Yeah.
Until my barber decided, without giving me any warning, that it just needed a trim.
Time.
Yeah, but like I wear contact lenses, so when I'm at the barber, I close my eyes because I don't want to get little hair fragments in. So we're like chatting baseball, and all of a sudden, it's like, anyway, the eyebrows look great. So no, I've never had my eyebrow. What are you having done to them? Waxed?
They're waxed. I have to tidy them up. Can't you see they're a mess?
No, I can't.
What do you know? You're a man.
I am a man. I have rights.
No.
I was thinking as well, maybe the RCMP apparently having a recording of the controversial meeting.
Oh yeah, they deleted. Oops.
In terms of like a blurb, I don't know what to say about that at this point. I'm tempted I always use a GIF from one of the early seasons of Star Trek: The Next Generation of Data just shrugging. I'm thinking maybe
just a shrug. Just shrug.
Like, the entire dispatch blurb will just be Data shrugging. Like I got nothing left. Like
we've already kind of lambasted the RCMP for the lack of credibility issues, right? Like it just adds to it.
Like basically a Data GIF, and please see all previous dispatches. Like
yes, exactly.
I don't have anything else to say about this.
Well, we could also like link to all the previous dispatches where we've like given the RCMP shit on this, right?
It's not a bad idea.
So I don't know. How do you want to divide this up, or should we just talk about how we're going to divide this up?
Let's just talk about it later, because you got to run. My kids have probably demolished the house upstairs because I told them to like be quiet while I was doing this. And
perfect. Well, how about then you just I'm going to leave this in your court. You decide what you want me to write, and I'll write it up.
Are we forgetting something we said we'd talk about?
Feel like we are, but like we're just going to have to let it go.
All right. Okay. Well, I'll get the podcast edited and online ASAP, and we will send out this dispatch on Saturday. Oh, by the way, we got a ton of editing. We have like 6 pieces that have landed.
I know it's been so much. We're way behind.
Thanks, freelancers. Okay. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Bye.